All right, let's go ahead and get started. I see the recording is on. So go ahead and call this work session to order on AO 2020-137 to establish government-to-government relations. If we can go ahead and start with a roll call, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Allard. Mr. Constant.
Here.
Mr. Dunbar.
Here.
Ms. Kennedy. Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Peterson. Mr. Perez-Verdia.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton. And Ms. Zalatel.
Here.
And I'll just note for the record, we've just been joined by Ms. Kennedy. All right, so if members want to get in the queue, please put yourself in the chat or text me if you can't access the chat. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to the sponsors to run us through the presentation for today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Mr. Constant. And just for the record, who is 3121793? Do we know? No, because we are still waiting on a couple of individuals.
Hello, that's my interpreter.
Okay, thank you, Dean.
This is Dean Gates.
Awesome. We are still waiting on a couple of folks to join us. Hopefully, we're anticipating hearing from former Assemblymember Bill Starr and a couple of other people. But the process for today will be a brief presentation by our consultant that helped drive the process with us. That's Veronica Slager with the North Star Group. We will then hear from Jessica Willoughby, the legal department, the primary drafter of the ordinance. And then we will hear from hopefully Mr. Starr and maybe another member of the kind of one of the consulting individuals that has worked with us. And then we'll open the conversation up to questions. So that's where we are now. So Ms. Slager, are you prepared? And Ms. Camacho, do you have the PowerPoint?
While we are getting that up and ready, just want to note for the record, we've been joined by Ms. Allard and Mr. Weddleton. Mr. Weddleton, I see your hand is raised. Did you have something before we begin? You're on mute, Mr. Weddleton.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Ms. Camacho, do you have the slide deck to open?
I do have it available, but if Ms. Slager could do it, that would be preferable.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Veronica. I thought we were going to do it. Can you pop that open and share?
I'm not sure how to do that.
So if you open it up on your computer, open up the file, and then you just go up to the top right and click that box that has the arrow pointing from the bottom to the top.
I'll have to find it. I didn't.
I'm sorry.
I can put it up for you. That's fine.
Thank you, Desiree.
If you could do that, that'd be great, just because I have my notes. I don't have the slide deck. I'm not that techie. All right, there we are. Thank you. Right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Veronica Slager, and I'm with North Star Group. I'm the team lead and communities and social performance advisor. My colleague Carl Oles, who is also online, and I have been working for the past several months to support the Assembly Working Group on this project. The purpose of these slides, as Christopher mentioned, is to provide an overview of the process and talk about, how we came to this ordinance that's before you, and with the goal of formalizing the government-to-government relations between the municipality of Anchorage and the native village of Eklutna. Next slide, please. So for those of you, I know most of you, but for those of you who are not familiar with Carl or myself or North Star Group, we're lifelong Alaskans. I think I always botch it, but Carl's, I think, a third generation Anchorageite. I'm from Southeast originally. Started North Star Group about 20 years ago. We work on a lot of different projects. We have an office here. I'm calling you from Anchorage, my house here in Anchorage. And then we also have an office in DC. We've worked on a variety of projects, not all relating to this kind of work, but just in a summary, just so that you can see the kind of work that we've done relating to it. Over time, we've worked for the Alaska Federation of Natives on a variety of projects, 10 chiefs up out of Fairbanks. We've worked with local governments, Bristol Bay Borough. I should actually throw in here the Mat-Su Borough, the city of Saxman, Northwest Arctic Leadership Team, which is, if you're not familiar with that, it's also called NWALT, which is all the governmental entities and NANA working together on their federal relations efforts. And then, really what kind of brought me and Carl into this topic area really was back in the mid-90s. We worked for the then Governor Knowles, and I was the staff director for the Commission on Rural Governance and Empowerment, which was a state tribal initiative to look at, how they could smooth out those. There were many conflicts that were arising that we don't need to get into, but there's been a couple of reports that have been written over time. The work that was done back then led to the very kind of first type of agreement like this, or at least conversation about it, which was the Millennium Agreement, which created kind of a framework for what we now are calling government-to-government agreements. Then just another couple projects that are just worth, highlighting that we're working on right now. I'm doing a lot of work with the OECD out of Paris on looking at the role of Indigenous communities in regional economic development. We're doing a project on North America on that, in Alaska and Canada, and then also developing a timeline on the kind of the arc of the journey for engagement with Indigenous peoples in the United States, and that's a work in progress. And there will be an Alaska and even an Anchorage spin-off on that project. Next slide, please. So the process that we undertook based on the, as directed by the resolution, the working group was formed. We were brought in to support, the conversation or the dialogue. We spent about the last year exchanging, having meetings. I think we've had more than 20 formal working group meetings. We've had dozens and dozens of individual conversations with subject matter experts, legal experts. We've talked to culture bearers. The working group met with the tribal council, the Eklutna Tribal Council. At the very beginning, we did kind of a baseline research effort where we interviewed all the working group members to find out what they wanted to get out of the process. We talked to subject matter experts. That then led us to the development of a engagement framework that just said, okay, so this is where we're at. This is kind of where we want to go. These are the values that they want to bring to the process. And a lot of those words and that framework have been folded into the actual drafted ordinance. And then also just together, we reviewed a lot of the existing state and local and tribal cooperation agreements and used those as models. And Jessica will, go into that as well. Next slide. And then, just one of the things that as you all have discussed, and our process really reinforced and identified that there's a lot of mutual benefits and opportunities that are coming out of this, and that will even be further articulated and realized with an ordinance like this, and local government efficiencies, working together, shared responsibility, economic development, joint projects, program collaboration. You work together very much like the NWALT up in Northwest Arctic, specific projects, joint efforts to resolve issues, even specific thinking about the kind of the next what we have coming up in the next federal administration, in terms of infrastructure and working together on roads, environmental mitigation, restoration, and other programs. There's also opportunities for education to inform not just the residents of the municipality of Anchorage, but all Alaskans about Alaska's indigenous peoples and the diverse culture. Of course, that there's the municipality of Anchorage serves all of the 229 federally recognized tribes and Native corporations and organizations. This is kind of the heart of all business, and it is not kind of, it is. The idea is that this ordinance will be a major step forward for building on that, all the work that you've done up to this point, and just strengthens the relations with not just the tribe that is in the boundaries of the municipality, but also tribes in general, and that the municipality has this great, unique opportunity to lead the state and actually the nation in taking this step by normalizing government-to-government relations with the native village of Eklutna. So I think that's all I have to say. If anybody, I don't know if you want to hold questions till the end, Chris, or Mr. Constant, or should we then take it to?
I think that we should just proceed with Ms. Willoughby's presentation on the mechanics.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Veronica. This is Jessica Willoughby. I'm an assistant municipal attorney here at the municipality. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share what is a S version, which I believe has been distributed to the clerk's office and will be distributed widely from there. So what I have in front of me is the S version of the ordinance. I just want to confirm you all can see it.
Yes.
Okay. So building on what Veronica was saying, when putting together this ordinance, we had several objectives. Obviously, at the forefront, recognizing, acknowledging, and learning the Native village of Eklutna's place in Anchorage history, as well as in our present. Creating a more formal process with structure, with protocols to ensure a clear and lasting relationship into the future. And among those, identifying points of contact to ensure accountability and clarity. So the ordinance begins by creating a new chapter within Title I. And it begins with a land acknowledgement, similar to what's read before assembly meetings. It recognizes the 229 federally recognized tribes. It commits the MOA to clear and lasting government-to-government relations with the Native village of Eklutna. That sort of sets the tone for what comes next. Within section 230.055, that's where members of the public get 3 minutes of time in front of the assembly. And here we grant the Native Village of Eklutna 5 minutes, more in line with what community councils are granted than the general public. This is a new chapter. This relates to regular meetings. Now, subsection A is language that is lifted entirely from the charter, as the Assembly and School Board meets 4 times yearly in public meetings. So we follow the conventions and the Assembly and direct the Assembly and the Native Village to meet at least 2 times yearly. And then this is more of the meat to what that formal policy and protocol will look like. It directs the municipality to develop and implement a written policy. And there's several points that policy needs to address, including identifying programs and projects that affect the Native Village of Eklutna, and also identifying individuals within the municipality who's responsible or whose work relates to the programs and projects. It identifies that there shall be a point of contact between the municipality and the Native Village of Eklutna, either the mayor or designee. It also directs that there should be regular training required of employees and regular reports back to the assembly. Also through this.
Hold on, Jessica, just briefly want to interrupt. Can you go back slightly up?
Sure.
The report there, it's not just report to the mayor, but it's also report to chair. So it says the mayor's designation will be the point of contact. The chair of the assembly shall be the point of contact. So it's both houses.
Yes, absolutely. There's points of contact identified within the administration and also within the assembly. And then the report is from the mayor to the assembly, kind of an update as to where the municipality is in its duties under this chapter. And then last, the ordinance throughout declares that there's no private right of action, or that this is not meant to preempt any of our responsibilities under federal or state law related to tribes. Okay, so that is the current S version. I am open to questions, and I believe there's more conversation to be had. Right.
Jessica, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to proceed with some input from members of the community. I forget her last name, Christy Williams, I think, on?
Hi, yes, I am. This is Christy.
Hi, Christy. I know this might be a little bit impromptu, but we had hoped to hear from you a little bit about your background and then a little bit about your perspective on this proposed ordinance.
Certainly, I'm happy to share that. My name is Christy Williams. I grew up in Fairbanks. My family is Wichan and Koyukon from the interior of Alaska. I went to law school in New Mexico. After law school, I worked for Senator Murkowski as her Native and Rural Affairs advisor, and then transitioned to the Department of Interior, working as a counselor to Kevin Washburn in the Office of the Secretary of Interior. I'm currently working at Chalista. I did submit some comments to Assemblymember yesterday, Cameron. Unfortunately, it's not the position of Chalista, so I just want to make clear that this is a position of mine in my personal capacity. And
yes,
any questions that you have about the notes that I sent in, I'm happy to answer.
Well, yeah, so thank you. You know, if you might just put into the record just a summary of your thoughts on the notes there. Everyone hasn't seen those notes, but you're here to tell us, and we would love to hear your perspective.
Well, certainly. So thank you for reaching out. I appreciate that. I think it's a fantastic move that the municipality is supporting this initiative, and I would love to see it expanded even more broadly, as Veronica mentioned, to all of the 229 federally recognized tribes in the state. It was a challenge for the legislature to even get past, they were unable to pass even the most simple bill recognizing the tribes that are already federally recognized in the state. So this is a big step forward, as again, Veronica mentioned, for the state to start mending the relations with tribes in the state. And I just want to commend the Assembly for taking this on. Starting with the Eklutna makes sense. The land acknowledgement is a very respectful offering to the tribe, as these are the lands of the Dena'ina people. But it would be beneficial, I think, to the Assembly to broaden this initiative to expand to all the tribes that you plan to partner with or potentially could partner with in the future, so that you have a template to guide you, so you don't have to go back and amend the ordinance every time you want to partner with a tribe. So my suggestion was simply to expand the current initiative to honor all of the tribes in the state, and to potentially work with those folks as potential partners, having that template tribal resolution available, and then from that drafting individual tribal resolutions, I'm sorry, not tribal resolutions, but drafting individual tribal consultation policies tailored to each distinct tribal entity that you partner with.
Right. So just to summarize, you support what we're doing and you want to see us go further and more broadly recognizing the Alaska Native peoples.
That's correct. I do. I support this initiative, and I would like to see it expanded. I'm glad to see that you are working with more tribal organizations. I think it would be important for the Assembly, as you're working through this process, to also reach out to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Alaska headquarters is located here in Anchorage, as well as a number of other agencies. When I worked at the department, it was really important to tribes to engage very early with them in the process, even before drafting. So I think there's still an opportunity to do that here, as well as to reach out to other Native organizations in the state, as well as in Anchorage. You have, the First Alaskans Institute is here, Alaska Federation of Natives. Most of the headquarters of all of the tribal businesses are located here, or at least the regional corporation offices, some of the village corporation offices. So you have a number of people, a deep pool of experience to pull from, to make sure that this is a really robust and sustainable government-to-government relations policy that you have.
Thank you very much. And for the most part, except perhaps the BIA, I think we did speak with all of those individuals, and I look forward to us deepening that into our process as we go forward. Thank you. And Mr. Chair?
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and go through the queue that we have now, and then we have 2 more folks to speak. So if we could try to be brief, I'll start with Mr. Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I had a question about the ordinance, and that's the last page, the last section in no preemption. I think it sounds like a good idea to put that general savings clause or section in there, but I was a little curious what prompted, I guess, the need to insert this, and is there an example of a responsibility? I mean, usually preemption, municipality doesn't preempt federal state law, it's the other way around. So what responsibilities? Is there an example that brought this concern and identified the need for this section?
I can answer that. This is Jessica Willoughby. Dean, I think it was in an abundance, 1, an abundance of caution, and 2, in an abundance of communication to state very clearly that there's no intention to step on any toes here. I don't think there's any debate to be had with regards to preemption. We fully recognize that the federal government preempts our laws. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton?
Thanks. A couple questions, and this first one I know I've been answered before, but I forget. But Native Village of Eklutna is not the same as Eklutna Native Association. Is that correct?
Do you mean Eklutna Incorporated?
Oh, yeah, maybe so.
Right.
So what's the? Give me
I can answer
briefly the
that.
difference.
Aaron is here and he can answer that if he wants, but Mr. Chair,
I'll
I'm sorry to
answer it,
interrupt.
yeah.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so John, the Native Village of Eklutna is the tribal entity that was created pre-ANCSA. In 1961, it was formally activated to fight for land claims. The Native Village of Eklutna is the federally recognized tribe. Eklutna Inc. is the ANCSA Village Corporation that was created by the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. So Eklutna Inc. is the for-profit corporation, landowner, and the Native Village of Eklutna is the tribal entity. At different times, there has been confusion over that. There's also been some tensions, but in my involvement over the last over a decade, the two entities work very closely together, but they have their own distinct roles, and several of the corporation directors are also involved in the council, but they represent two different, I guess, missions. Also, part of that is they do represent somewhat. There is overlap between the people they represent, but a good example of that is that any person from Eklutna that was born on or after December 18th, 1971, unless they've inherited shares, is not a shareholder in Eklutna Inc. However, any person who can claim descendancy from a base roll member based on the 1938 census by the BIA can apply to become a member of the Native Village of Eklutna.
Okay, that's a great help. Thanks. I think some of the players cross over, and it makes it a little fuzzy for me, but
There
appreciate
is
that.
definitely crossover, but yeah, they're two distinct entities, and we, like many Alaska Native people, we wear multiple hats at different times.
Good. And then if I could, one more, and I'll combine actually two, I guess. But is what I look at this somewhat parallel to with Birdwood, which has a number of government powers, and we meet with them quarterly and just hash things out and tug and pull at different things. So I wonder what governmental power does the Native Village of Eklutna have that might conflict with or replace city powers, and then maybe add in. We got we had some fairly minor, but another issue with the similar thing, and people focus on, oh, this is all about bringing gambling to Anchorage. So maybe combine that question. What powers does the Native Village or tribe have, and how's that relate to bringing gambling in?
Well, that's a really big question. I mean, the powers, most of the powers that the Native Village of Eklutna has are prescribed in federal law. A good example of that is the Indian Child Welfare Act. There's other programs. Another good example of that would be the Section 106 Historic Site Preservation Act. So, for example, the municipality, if they want to, a good example would be the tank farm down at the Port of Anchorage. I received a notification of the expansion of the tank farm down at the port. As required by federal law, I have to be consulted to see if it conflicts with historic sites and what mitigation plans would take place were they to occur. And by
Okay, but
myself, I
these
mean like
powers,
tribe. Yeah.
powers, land use. I mean, do you follow our Title 20 our code? I mean, I guess.
Well, there's a bit of a modification to that. There's what's called the Occludna Overlay District that was developed prior to this that recognizes the unique historical characteristics of the area. That was also done in concert with Occludna Inc., being the largest private landholder in the municipality. And I mean, what I would say at this point is that the issue about gambling is really a completely separate issue that some people want to tie together, but is really a completely separate issue at this point that is between the tribe and the federal government.
Okay, that may come up at the public hearing.
I have no doubt it will, but I'm just saying that right now, in that case, it's really at that level, it's government to government between our tribal government and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the Department of the Interior.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Zolotil, did you want to ask now or wait until after all of our speakers?
I'll ask now, and then if it's going to be more than just a quick answer, I can wait. So the question is, what's this going to look like in operation and application? I see the reports, but who is going to be doing this work, I guess, within the municipality? I want to make sure that there's really clear route to making sure that the ordinance is effectuated.
If I might, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So there are two elements that are going to clearly drive the fact that this will stay at a high enough policy level that the work gets done. It's essentially the mayor and the chair of the assembly who are going to drive the municipal side of the process, or the assembly as a whole, if the chair for some reason is not willing to entertain it. And so what it is specifically will be determined as we move forward with joint meetings between the two bodies and establish a work plan. There are discussions about trainings and implementation of policy across the administration that will be implemented by the mayor and the mayor's team on the 8th floor. There will be some policies that the assembly will contemplate and move forward with in the future, and those will be on us and the clerk to administer and implement. And so I think the answer to your question really is it depends on the specifics as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is in regard to one of the previous speakers that was talking about expanding the ordinance to include all Alaskan tribes. And so I certainly recognize that we have several of the tribes that hold their headquarters here in Anchorage and that, but I was interested in getting some kind of an example of when the municipality would actually need to work with a tribe outside of Anchorage, somebody that's a landholder outside of Anchorage, outside of the municipal limits. So anyway, so I'm just curious as to what would really drive the need behind expanding to all tribes in the state of Alaska. Just need an example. Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair, I can speak briefly to that.
Sure.
There are an untold array of possibilities that could fall into that. One that I have long talked about in relationship to issues that impact my district, I have called for the development of an Office of Rural Affairs for the municipality, because we find ourselves to be the hub of our state, and we have people transiting in and out of our community for healthcare, for therapies, for correctional matters, for any number of things where individuals may become stranded at some point. And I believe that the stronger relationships we have with rural communities, the better. And many of those rural communities are, in fact, operating with governments that are sovereign tribal entities. And so, to me, that's just one very small and specific potentiality is to build bridges with rural communities who are part of a flow of individuals back and forth. But I would welcome to hear anyone else who might contemplate why.
Yeah, this is Cameron Perez-Verdia. I would just add, and I would certainly invite other speakers as well. You know, the Anchorage, as we all know, is the hub of Alaska. It's the largest village in Alaska. All tribes have a presence here, whether it's the headquarters of their ANC, or whether it's a variety of different programs and work that they're doing. So, but I would just say that this ordinance does not, at this point, expand a relationship to all tribes. It recognizes that there are 229 federally recognized tribes, and it recognizes the need for us to sort of be in connection with them. But this ordinance really is about developing a direct relationship with the Eklutna. The previous speaker was saying that there's an encouragement once we finish this, or I mean, whether we build it from this or we do it next, but just an encouragement to do this broader with more tribes or all tribes. So I would just say that in its current form, this doesn't develop a formal relationship with all tribes. So anyway, and I would just also say that, you know, the tribes have jurisdiction over tribal members, not just tribal land jurisdiction. So when you have tribal members who live and work in our city, we still have an obligation to develop a relationship with those tribal and entities as well. But I would just close by saying that this is a first step towards that. This is a step towards developing a formal relationship with the Eklutna, while recognizing that there's a potential need in the future to develop that relationship with all tribes.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, and just follow up. Oh, there's somebody else to speak, so let them go ahead. Thanks.
Go ahead, whoever's on that phone number.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, through the chair. To answer Assemblymember Kennedy's question, this is Christy Williams again. I just wanted to add that Anchorage has a very large Native population. It basically represents every tribe in the state, in our city. And a lot of the tribal organizations here bring in significant tax dollars to the municipality of Anchorage already, especially in years when the AFN convention is held here. I think that the reason that I'm suggesting that all tribes be included in a broader consultation policy to come, not necessarily in this particular ordinance that you're working on today, but to expand it in the near future to include all tribes, is because generally the way tribal consultation policies work, there's one broad policy that's created, and then from that policy, other drafts that are, partnerships with tribes are created, and that's just government efficiency. It's so you don't have to go back and amend the ordinance, every time you want to partner with a new tribe. You have the one broad consultation policy that allows the municipality to govern and to formulate a consultation policy with a distinct tribe and carve that distinct consultation policy out as needed. So it's just a matter of government efficiency.
Well, my thanks to all those that answered the question. So I appreciate that, because I did want to know if there was an effort then to amend this particular one, and I didn't want to lose the specificity to Eklutna. So happy to hear all the answers. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Allard?
Thank you. So they're probably really simple. This is going to go to Mr. Liggett. Just for clarification, is the NBE, are we sovereign land yet? Are you guys considered that?
The native village of Eklutna has tribal jurisdiction over, we're arguing we have tribal jurisdiction over an 8-acre parcel in Birchwood. But beyond that, the lands on which the actual tribal headquarters sit are also owned by the tribe. They're not held in trust right now by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So it's a really technical issue, but to answer your question, no, the lands that are held by Eklutna Inc. are not considered sovereign lands at this point.
Okay, thank you. And this probably would help to go, Mr. Chair, if I can, to Mr. Weddleton, that the state law would really have to be involved if there was any sort of casino that was to go up anywhere within Eklutna land. And based on that, that might reassure that NBE would have to work with the state on that. And that's something that they could work out. And then I'd also just like to direct a question to Mr. Constant, since he's being the sponsor on this. On the resolution, or what we're doing right now, are we included, and I say we meaning the assembly as a body, with the reporting and the accountability, so that we could be briefed on what's happening within NVE and this government to government relationship?
Yes, it's essentially relationship strip, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. Yes, it's directly linking the assembly and the mayor to the native village. So it's one of those unique arrangements where we are not devolving all of the negotiating authority to the mayor, which is traditional, but instead we are reserving for ourselves the right to be closely involved.
Thank you. And then if I could just do one last follow-up, then my only concern would be the term sovereign inside of this. But other than that, I'm very supportive of it. And I would probably bring forward an amendment just to everybody aware to take the word sovereign out. But other than that, I think this government to government plan is a really great thing.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead with one more question, and then we'll go to our last slate of speakers. Mr. Gates?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my question is about the costs. I noticed there's no summary of economic effects attached with this ordinance. So there's several mandates, though, that look like they will incur some costs. You know, the mandate to develop the written policy, to have 2 meetings a year, to train municipal employees. So was there some cost associated? Will there be a C submitted? And what is it? How will it be covered?
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. No, there isn't a C at this time. What we have determined is that at this point, other than the 2 meetings and at least some concept of training, we don't know what the specifics are. And as we engage in the first formalized meetings between the bodies, then we would be able to determine, and if there are costs associated, we would bring them forward. But at this time, having a couple of meetings, I think, is a nominal expense to the operation of the municipality. And the development of trainings, we'll see what the administration determines that means.
If I could follow up shortly, a summary of economics effects is not required if the cost is under 30,000. So I guess their response is saying pretty much feel it's below that threshold of 30,000 a year. Mm-hmm.
Yes, unless at some point in the future additional work and effort is determined, and then we'll come forward with an appropriating mechanism.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Allard, you had one more question?
I do, thank you. To the parties involved in this, is it possible that we could change the word sovereign to unique? And I guess, Aaron, maybe I can reference that or refer that to you, that question.
No, the reference to our sovereignty is established by federal law. It is something. The municipality of Anchorage has sovereignty. The native village of Eklutna has sovereignty. I wouldn't question that by saying that the city of Anchorage is unique.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
then
if I might, can I direct that one to Jessica, to Todd Sherwood as well?
Sure, if they have anything to add.
This is Jessica Willoughby. I hear something Member Allard asking whether we can replace the word sovereign with unique. Obviously, the terms are not interchangeable. Sovereign is a term of art used by the federal government, which is why we use it here. So I wouldn't necessarily support changing the word to unique versus, if there's consensus that the word should be removed, that would be a different matter.
Thank you. All right, Dean is in the queue.
All right, Mr. Gates.
I just wanted to comment that sovereign as a tribe is not exactly the same as sovereign lands. So I just wanted to note that since Ms. Allard's question was about the land, but the tribe is recognized as a sovereign, the land ownership might be considered differently. It's a very complicated area.
Thank you. Mr. Weddleton.
Just briefly, I'm looking through the S version. Oh, I'm sorry, I do say I was looking for the word sovereign. It was deleted in that one, line 42. But then at 39, it says recognition of sovereign tribes. Okay, thanks. I thought the problem was solved, but it's still in there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I might finally call on former Assembly Member Honorable Bill Starr, if he is still on the line.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the honorable side, but yeah, I'm here. Is there something specific, or should I just ramble for a second? And your work session's over at 1, is that correct?
1:10, so we have time.
1:10, yeah. Yeah, so Mr. Stark, Bill, to put a little frame around it, your letter was quite effective at communicating the value of this. Maybe just, it's not a ramble, help us understand the passion in which you brought that letter forward, because it was one of the best pieces of writing I've seen on the question we have before us.
Well, I think that's the key, is what is the question before you? And that's what I've always found helpful to diagnose as you approach the question. And one of the things that's effective is communication as you guys outreach. And my experience in the outreach, particularly to that entity that is sovereign, that is unique, that is in a very unique category inside a municipality. That's how you framed it. When you move forward to sort of codify how you're going to work with that entity, I think it becomes less of a challenge that it's sovereign or that it's unique or that it has government powers of its own. But what I believe you do is you set up a mechanism recognized both by the current assembly, the current executive branch, and those to come. What I also believe that it does is that it puts the responsibility on NVE to step up with a structure, with a formality, with a well-known process for bringing issues to government and asking for solutions or engaging in cooperative understandings. That is lacking, and I believe Cameron spoke to it earlier, is that's what's starting to be done here, is that effective way of communicating. I wouldn't get too deep into the other conversations. I don't think there's any subliminal reference that sovereign equals gambling or that there's a fast one being pulled here. The accountability goes both ways. The municipality has the accountability, and I believe NVE has the accountability and likely would welcome that engagement at the structured level.
So with that said, Bill, just as an overarching message, what is your message as a former member of the Assembly about what we should do with this legislation?
Well, I think you should pass it. I think it's safe in terms of policy setting. It also does what's necessary, is it puts things in a structured, codified language as opposed to, say, to a committee policy or somebody that just sort of decides to do it this way once. The Native Claims Settlement Act, North Anchorage Land Agreement, they're all very structured, and I believe that they're successful in the conversations because they have that structure. And by formalizing it, I think it's really necessary. I wish we had it then on my term to address land encroachments and policy calls that weren't clear, as well as, again, NVE does a pretty good job, but this gives them sort of a reason in their own governance to be organized and to bring topics with the responsibility to discuss them as a government to government type of structure. That is needed. And so my underarching is or overarching, however you want to word it, is I say do it. It's a safe thing to do, and I think it's appropriate and it's respectful.
Well, thank you very much, Bill.
Thanks. I'll be emailed if anybody has questions on some of the overlay district that was mentioned and some of the other interactions in government. We changed code then, for example, in an NVE interchange. And so the history is important, and I'm a little bit passionate about it because it's an important place. So thank you for letting me testify.
Thank you. And if we might, the last word before any last questions, Mr. Chair, I would like to hand the floor to Mr. Leggett to give us any final thoughts before we move to introduction and vote on this next week.
Well, I want to thank everybody here, and I especially want to thank those on the committee that have worked hard over this last year to iron out what I think is going to be viewed, in the future as monumental legislation, and in a way turning the corner on the relationship between governmental agencies and native governments. I think it's the timing is so right. The moment is here. I think we're making history here, I think, is what I'm really trying to communicate. And I'm really thankful for everybody's questions. And I think at the end of the day, what we're both trying to do is work towards creating a better city and a better place for all our people that live here.
Great.
Mr. Chair, with that, I yield back the floor and I just say thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. I just want to read a comment that was put in our chat into the record by Mr. Cameron Perez-Verdilla. Quote, Anchorage is not bestowing sovereignty. It's only acknowledging the inherent sovereignty of tribes, end quote. All right, so if anyone else has any questions, please put yourself in the queue. We have until 1:10 p.m. Ms. Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to bring up the fact that I do have an amendment that has a couple different changes, potential changes. So I wanted to talk a little bit and give people that are already there here online, even though they may be there on Tuesday, but either to mull this over or comment if they want to. But one of the statements that was made during the presentation was in regard to the portion of the ordinance that talks about the statement is the preemption. It's in the 3.105.035. No preemption, and nothing in this chapter is meant to preempt, supersede, or replace any responsibilities that the municipality may have under federal and state law. And my amendment kind of expands on that. And it was the comment I think that was used was, we don't want to step on anyone's toes. And, and that was kind of my intention here too, was that I wanted to make sure that this document wasn't in any way going to risk or complicate or conflict with any tribal status and standing that's already been established by the state or by the federal government or by the courts system, the courts. So I don't know if my amendment would really be necessary. I think it's more clarifying in terms of how it was meant to kind of protect both parties and risk nothing from both parties. But anyway, just so that you all know, I think you probably all got a copy of it when it was distributed right before this meeting. So hopefully everybody's seen it. And then the other one was just to talk about the idea of requiring that we meet 2 times a year. And I thought, in some cases that might be too much, and in some cases it may not be enough. So I was hoping that we would basically establish something whereby either the municipality or the native village of Eklutna could literally call for a meeting, because if it's, if it's a month or so after we've had a biannual meeting or an annual meeting and something comes up, I would think that we would want to give them the ability to do that. So anyway, so that's in there too. And I guess we can talk more about it on Tuesday. But again, if there was anybody that really wanted to comment on that specifically before then, I'd be interested in the feedback. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a question, I guess, for Dean or whomever helped draft this amendment, working with Crystal. So I don't understand the term unprecedented legal status. Is that, I just never seen the term unprecedented in our legal documents. Is that a term of art, or what does that mean exactly? To a certain degree, every time we take legal action, you know, when we change the law, when we pass an ordinance, it's unprecedented. So what does that mean?
Okay. Mr. Dunbar, I'd ask that Mr. Gates speak to that, because that is his term when we were working on this. Thank you.
Yes, this is Dean. And that's actually a very good question. I was struggling with what term to put here, but if we put something that said not current, then people would look at the date of passage of this ordinance as to saying nothing that isn't established before the date of the ordinance. And I wanted to avoid that. I said unprecedented because I think that would just indicate that at the time that some issues being looked at, if there were only federal state legal status that occurred even after the passage of this ordinance, that it isn't there. I welcome, legal's thoughts on a different synonymous type of term. The idea was, though, you have legal precedent that establishes legal status or jurisdiction or standing that's established by statute or by case law. So if there's no precedent for establishing standing or legal status, that's what this means. This code doesn't establish anything that doesn't have some precedent already set up in state or federal law. So, but again, I welcome some idea for a different term that conveys the same meaning and concept.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Chair, I would ask, I don't know if she's willing to shoot off the hip, but if Ms. Willoughby wanted to speak to this amendment, I think this would be a good time to hear from her.
Sure.
This is Jessica Willoughby. Forrest, I'll defer until I see the amendment written, and I'd be happy to give you my thoughts, and I'd be happy to talk to Dean about this.
Okay. Yeah. Not be widely disseminated just yet. But I think I guess I'll just say off the bat before, we'll have floor debate on this, obviously, but to me, it kind of feels like a hat on a hat. I don't really see how this amendment changes, the first section, I should say, changes what is already the case. But I could see how, if I was a member of the Native Village of Eklutna, for example, I might see this as perhaps a little worrisome, but I guess I would also defer to Aaron, and we'll have those conversations in the days to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Constant?
Yeah, thank you. On the amendments, I really have to think quite a bit, but these documents have both been reviewed by the Native Village of Eklutna Native Tribal Council, and I'm not comfortable making these changes. I may be able to be made more comfortable, I don't know. But in particular, the issue of the meetings, I would speak to the custom that we hope through the drafting to institute by having 2 meetings. And that is that annually the municipality would host 1 meeting, and annually the Native Village of Eklutna would host 1 meeting. So it would be basically on the grounds of the entities themselves to host. So that's why we set 2. And in particular, the language of the amendment probably could raise some strong concerns, because we don't have a right to call the Native Village of Eklutna to meet. And so it can't be when called by either government. Everything we've done within the context and structure of this ordinance and this dialogue has been by mutual agreement. And so there can be no us telling them to do anything. So I have concerns about that second part as well.
Can I follow up on that, Mr. Chair, please?
So we are pretty much out of time, but I will do Ms. Kennedy, Mr. Dunbar, and then I'm going to close us off.
Thank you, and I'll be quick, Mr. Chair. Mr. Constant, my thought, though, is not necessarily that the municipality would have the right to call a meeting, but the native village of Eklutna would have the ability to call an additional meeting should something arise that they felt needed our attention immediately. So that was really my motivation behind that, was not to preclude additional meetings. So we can have better discussion about it, but unless you think that the native village of Eklutna is actually also precluded from calling a meeting if necessary, then I will definitely be working on bringing this amendment forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
I would have a response, but I can wait.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar?
Yeah, I think they probably are precluded from calling in the sense of like requiring us to, outside of our own ordinance. The thinking behind this was that, and I apologize if this was stated earlier and I just missed it, but that the native village of Eklutna would also pass their own resolution or their equivalent to our ordinances in their own law or records that would mirror this pretty closely. And perhaps, I know we're out of time, perhaps on Tuesday night, Aaron could speak a little bit to what that might look like. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. I have a short comment. I need to close this meeting.
Mr. Gates?
Oh, was that for me? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, my comment was just about the meetings. I kind of note that there's probably no remedy. So I think this is just showing good faith that we want to set this, not right, but agreement up to being able to call meetings by demonstrable need. But, if one party or the other just declines, I don't think there's any remedy to enforce this provision. But I welcome Lego's thoughts on that. But I just wanted to point out it's not a right per se, but good faith statement that this is what we would do if one party has to call it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gates. With that, I'll go ahead and close this work session. Thanks everyone for the discussion. We'll be deliberating this on Tuesday. And with that, I bid everyone a good weekend.